Basically almost ready to go to OLS, but I wanted you guys to be able to see it and comment on it when we get in executive session. So we won't discuss it now, but we'll talk about it then. And if you're all ready, I will read the script and we'll go.
You are all set.
Okay, welcome. I am Senator James Gray. Today, we will be having here public hearings on House Bills HB 476 and an amendment to that, Amendment 2021-1127, House Bill 374, House Bill 545, House Bill 67, and House Bill 332. Before we get started, I will read through the checklist to ensure that the meeting we are holding is in compliance with the right to know law. As chair of the Senate Election Law and Municipal Affairs Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, and its extensions, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. In accordance with the emergency order, I'm confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access possible by video and other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom webinar for this electronic meeting. All members of the committee and select legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously in this meeting through this platform. And the public has access to contemporaneously watch and listen to the meeting on Zoom and YouTube and via phone by following the directions and links provided on the General Court website. We have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting in the Senate calendar. We are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please email remotesenate@leg.state.nh.us or call area code 603-271-6931. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting due to technical problems on our side, we will adjourn the meeting and reschedule. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Finally, let us start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each person states their presence, please also state where you are and if anyone else is in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. I will call the roll. And Senator Birdsell has notified us that she has another commitment and will join us in a few minutes. Senator Ward?
I'm in my home and started, and I'm alone in the room.
Senator Susie?
Good morning. This is Donna Susie. I'm at my home in Manchester, and I'm alone.
Senator Perkins Quokka?
Morning, Senator Perkins Quokka. I'm at my home in Portsmouth, and I am alone in the room.
And I am James Gray. I'm in my home in Rochester in District 6, and I am alone in this room. All right. We have quite a full schedule today. So I don't anticipate that the first bill and amendment will take all that long. So I do intend to go into executive session and discuss some of the bills from prior sessions at the beginning to try and get them behind us. So we will open the hearing on House Bill 476, and if you would call the prime sponsor.
Representative Gay.
Thank you. Good morning. And I appreciate that I get to give you an extremely simple bill that passed last year, but it never made it to y'all because of the shutdown. The purpose is to allow election officials who must staff multiple voting polls in their town or their ward with people who do not necessarily live in that town or ward as the current law requires. So this would just change that to that they live in that ward or their town. I guess it would help me if you just asked me a question because it seems super simple.
All right. Just in case some of our listeners don't understand, some of the communities in New Hampshire have taken advantage of a provision in state law that allows a town to break up into smaller voting districts. And right now, the current law would require the people who staff the polling place in that district they would have to come from that district. If any of the senators think I'm wrong, I certainly would appreciate any clarification. But is that the case as far as you know, Representative Gay?
Yes, that actually is the law, and this bill was requested by our town moderator, who really likes to follow the law. But as you know, it's pretty hard to get skilled people to manage elections. So you're lucky to have in Salem, we have 5 voting districts. Other towns don't do that, don't have that many. So they don't know that this is an issue for us. But there are a few towns, and perhaps there are some wards. They wanted to make sure that wards had the same rights that towns did. So that was included, that ward officials also have the right to appoint moderators, assistant moderators and assistant clerks from anywhere in their ward or their town, rather just from the district. I was told that in one town near us, they actually moved the lines of the district lines to accommodate the current law, which you can imagine is a real nightmare to educate people that they're going to go vote somewhere else. So we haven't done that, but we would really like to be following the law.
Okay, questions from the committee members at all?
Done.
You did say wards in your talk, and my best recollection is that this would not be applicable to the cities, would only be applicable to the towns.
No, part 2. Part 2 is additional polling places, special provisions for cities. So it would amend 658. Section 18, whereas the towns is section 14. Cities may adopt the provisions, and each assistant moderator and assistant clerk shall have their domicile in the city ward where they will serve.
Okay, I'm glad we cleared that up. Additional questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody with their hand up?
Our next speaker is Kelly Potenza.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Wonderful. I think this is a pretty simple thing that should have passed last year, but because of everything being shut down, it just makes sense. We need to be able to be open to have people helping in other places. And it is hard to get skilled people, and having those restrictions removed really opens the door for just all help from New Hampshire citizens in certain wards. Please support this bill. It makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Questions from this committee? All right, seeing none, do we have anyone else that wants to testify on the bill? We'll get to the amendment in just a minute.
If anyone else would like to speak on HB 476, please raise your hand now. And I'm not seeing any hands, Senator.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing on the bill itself and open the public hearing on the amendment, which is 2021-1127. Just as a bit of an introduction, sometimes we take things that aren't, and we'll use the word germane, and tack them onto another bill. This one is related, but just to make sure that people do have a chance to comment on it, I will let the sponsor of the amendment, Senator Bradley, if he's there, to comment on that.
Senator Bradley.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you very much for allowing me to testify on this amendment, and my thanks to Representative Gray for her willingness to allow this amendment to be attached to her bill. About a month ago, the town of Middleton contacted me. They had made a mistake in the posting of warrant article 20 in their community. It was a posting that was 2 days late. The town voted that they were okay with the select board posting the warrant a couple of days late. And now, because it technically didn't comply with the posting law, they have asked me and Senator Gray to, with this amendment, ratify the actions of the voters of Middleton. This happens almost every year, that there's an inadvertent mistake made by one of our 234 towns. So this is a pretty common practice, and I appreciate the opportunity to bring this in front of you today. Thank you.
Trish, if you would put the amendment up on the screen, some of the people may not have been able to see that. And while she's doing that, do we have anyone else with their hand up to speak on this amendment?
If anyone else would like to speak on the amendment to HB 476, please raise your hand now. And we have a hand from Representative Gay.
Representative?
Yes, thank you. Yes, this amendment in no way undoes the good that this bill will do. So I totally support it.
Okay, thank you. If you could make it a little bigger, I'd appreciate it.
Is that good?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
If there's anyone else that would like to speak on the amendment, please raise your hand. We'll leave this up on the screen for another 30 seconds or so. Anyone else with their hand up?
I'm not seeing any new hands raised.
All right. With that, I'll close the public hearing on this, and we do have a little bit of time. I'll hold off on any votes, but I do want to speak at least to a couple of the things that you've gotten. So if I could have a motion to go into executive session, I'd appreciate that.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go into executive session. I'll call the roll. Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Susie.
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
Yes.
Senator Birdsell will join us later. She's excused for now, and I vote yes. So we're in executive session. The first thing I want to take up is the email that Trish sent this morning on 243 and explain to you what's going on there. We had the request about providing more detail on the various budgets that are presented. I looked over probably 20 or 30 town budgets this weekend, and there is a very big difference community to community on what they put out for information. I dug back into my Accounting 101 book and trying to find a way to better describe detailed line item, which is the words that were in the bill as presented to us. and there's a concept called subaccounts. The department, DRA, does specify a chart of accounts, and those are reflected on the various MS reports that the cities and towns reply to DRA with. And if you look at the MS 737, it has a line item for police, and then down a couple things it has a line item for fire. Well, many communities want to break that down even further. So it's a term that is used in accounting, but not all that often, called subaccount. So we define what a subaccount is in there, and we make a little bit of a change to the definition of budget. We also define what the uniform chart of accounts is, and then we go into the paragraphs down below and we make some additions. Again,
Would you like me to share that, Senator Gray?
if the senators have it, that's fine for right now. It's probably too detailed for the public. If they want it, they can send me an email and I'll send it back to them, or send them to you to get to post it somewhere where they can get it. Again, this is to let you look at it. RSA 91A doesn't let me share with the whole committee and have conversations about it. So I wanted to get it out to you here in an executive session where the public will, know about it, know how to get it if they want it, and get comments. DRA seems to be fine with the words. The prime sponsor seems to be fine, and I want to make sure that you senators have plenty of time to look at it and comment on it before we do take any action on it. Going down through the list, and welcome Senator Birdsell. House Bill 141. There was an amendment 1185 that was sent to you.
House Bill 411?
411.
I don't have 141.
Maybe did I say something different?
Yes.
Well,
It's 411.
some people say that I'm dyslexic, but anyway,
Gray. Rick Lehman has his hand raised. Can I bring him in?
sure.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning,
Morning.
Rick.
Morning, Rick. I assume you're talking about House Bill 243.
The original was 243, yes.
The original was 243. I received an email comment from one of the interested parties suggesting that the amendment read, sub-accounts mean all levels used below the main account in that first line.
And that's possible to do. We're not going to take any action on that today. So if you'd send
Okay,
it to me on the email, I would appreciate that. And we'll consider that with other comments that come in.
good enough.
When we get out of executive session, if I'm not in a caucus or I'm not talking to less than a quorum of the group, which is 3, it's hard to discuss that. So
Yep, that's the way that works. Okay, I just didn't want you to take action without knowing that I received that comment. Thank you.
Right. It needs a formal amendment because sometimes we all know OLS sometimes doesn't like our words and wants to modify them some. So I would not do that one without having it go through OLS at least one time if there's a word or two afterward. So back to House Bill 411. Does anyone have any comments before we look for a motion on that? It just does the study committee. The only contentions were who appoints the members. So if there is no comments, I would take a motion on the bill and then a motion on the amendment.
The vote out to pass.
Okay,
I'll second.
so we have a motion and second on the bill. And do we have a motion on the amendment?
Move on to pass.
Move on to
Second.
pass on the amendment. And we have second.
Second.
Okay. Discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Senator Birdsell,
Yes.
Senator Ward,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Coca,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Now the bill is in front of us, ought to pass as amended. Do we have any comments on the motion ought to pass as amended? Seeing none, we'll call the roll. Senator Birdsell,
Yes.
Senator Ward,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Coca,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Do I have a motion for consent?
So moved.
Have,
Second.
we have a motion second for consent. Call the roll. Senator Birdsell,
Yes.
Senator Ward,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Coca,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Is there anybody that wants to take this one out?
I'll take it out.
Senator Ward will take it out. Okay. House Bill 183 is the next one on the list. And we have amendment 1184 on that, which I think I tried to incorporate the comments from you various senators. Senator Susie, you were commenting on the regulation part, and that they ought to be able to meet some minimum regulations, so that the amendment only talks to licensure. Would you like to comment on that part of it at least?
Yeah, I was just trying to pull it up again, Mr. Chairman. I just don't think there's a need for the legislation. I just think it's unnecessary, and I appreciate you trying to work on it to amend it, but I just don't see the rationale for even doing it.
And sometimes constituents' request is enough to make it such that we would go and do one of these things, even though, but it does make sure that, and for the listening public, we do in here change the age from under 18 to under 14 to make it clear that we are talking about soft drink stands run by juveniles, and making it clear that in this, that they would not be required to obtain a license from the city or town. So any further comments by any of the committee members? Senator Perkins Coca.
Yeah, I guess it's just hard to ensure that being exempt from licensing requirements would exempt them from everything you're contemplating. I guess, it's hard for us to know in every municipality what their license might require. So I guess I'm just not sure it's still accomplishing what you want. And unfortunately, I agree with Senator Susie. I just don't see the need for this at all. I do appreciate the effort to improve it, but I think kids selling lemonade are probably safe.
Well, as a comment to that, I looked into the hawkers and peddlers section 320 and 321, the RSA. And right now there is a bill that would do away with those sections. And originally I was going to put some words in there about exempting them from hawkers and peddlers requirements in 320, but they really don't fall under the category of hawkers or peddlers because they're not itinerant. They don't move from place to place, especially the way I have this amendment done. I mean, it's on their property, either owned or leased property. I guess they could go to their grandparents or stuff. That's why I said family instead of, whatever. again, we want to make sure that the owner of the place is, that they're at, and drawing on what Senator Susie said in our last meeting, that if they were doing something that was clearly wrong, because of a regulation, that they still would be subject to those regulations, and just not have to, in some community, pay the $2 or whatever it is for a license and go through that administrative hassle. So, all right. So do we have a motion on the bill?
Move on to pass.
Senator Birdsell moves off to pass, seconded by, the chair will second it to move it along. And do we have a motion on the amendment?
Move on to pass as amended.
And I'll second the amendment. And is there additional comments? Okay. I will call the roll. Senator Birdsell.
Yes.
Senator Ward.
No.
Senator Susie.
No.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
No.
And the chair votes yes. The amendment fails. We're back to the main motion on the bill itself before the amendment, and we'll call the roll. Senator Birdsell.
Yes.
Senator Ward.
No.
Senator Susie.
No.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
No.
And the chair votes yes. The motion fails. Do I have an alternative motion?
Move an expedient to legislate.
Senator Susie moves inexpedient to legislate. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any additional comments? I'll call the roll. Senator Birdsell.
Yes.
Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Susie.
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
Yes.
And the chair votes no. That's 4-1. Who would like to take that out?
I can.
Okay. Senator Susie.
Just out of curiosity, I forgot. I'm sorry. Going back to 411, who is taking that one out? Oh, Senator Ward, right?
Yes.
Sorry.
All right. Just to, we've got just a couple of minutes left. House Bill 223. Senator Susie, we've got you marked down as working on that. Did you
Yes,
have
and
any comments?
I have just not connected with Representative Sweeney yet. I have to send him my draft, so
Okay.
hope to do so very soon.
All right. We've already talked about House Bill 243, 285. Senator Birdsell, we have you marked down as working on that with.
Yep. My understanding is Dave Scanlon has put some language together. I just haven't been able to connect with him. I have a email into him, and I should probably be connecting with him today.
All right. And the last one that I have from previous meetings is 484. I was working on that with Cordell Johnston. I wrote some words. He didn't like it. He is now considering what he would like for words. And so there is a negotiation going on. And what we were really trying to come up with is a way that, a budget committee, and going on the premise that they should be commenting only on things that do have an impact on the budget, and how to word that, how to structure it. I suggested putting, line items in and then listing the impact on each one of the line items, or an estimated impact. And that's kind of where we're negotiating between myself and Cordell Johnston on something to bring back to the committee for your review. All right. Seeing that we're up against our time now, we'll have a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Okay.
We have a motion, the second, come out of executive session. I'll call the roll. Senator Birdsell,
Yes.
Senator Ward,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Coca,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. And we're out of executive session, and we will open the hearing on House Bill 374. And we'll call the prime sponsor.
Representative Power.
Good morning. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, honorable committee members. I appreciate the opportunity to introduce to you House Bill 374, relative to the official ballot referendum form of town meetings. For the record, I am Representative Diane Power. I represent the towns of Brookline and Mason in Hillsborough County, District 26. And presently, I serve on the House Municipal and County Government Committee. This bill comes from numerous constituent requests and is needed to address the unintended consequences resulting from the changes to the law governing SB2, which were based on the faulty premise that voters should not be allowed to vote to adopt SB2 by official ballot for the fear that they might be uninformed about SB2. With that, allow me to introduce the bill. House Bill 374 simply places the question to adopt SB2 back onto the official ballot and allows for all-day voting on town election day or by absentee ballot. A few key points to recognize about this bill are, first, this bill recognizes the ample opportunities for voters to become informed on SB2. Initially, when the question to adopt SB2 is proposed, it is discussed publicly by the governing body at a regular meeting at which there is public input. Then, once SB2 is on the warrant, there is a mandatory hearing on adopting SB2 as required by law. Furthermore, in multi-town districts, a hearing must be held in each town on separate days. By placing the question to adopt SB2 back onto the official ballot, voters are afforded more time to carefully consider the issue, unlike at an annual meeting where voters have to make up their minds on the spot in order to vote then and there. Second, this bill eliminates the control of a group at an annual meeting to decide whether or not to adopt the SB2 system. It is documented that voters in some towns have been denied the opportunity to vote on the question to adopt SB2 because the article was tabled by opponents without even discussion or debate. In addition, this bill addresses the disenfranchisement of voters who are unable to attend the annual meeting. This includes the elderly, sick, disabled, deployed military, business travelers, shift workers, and families with childcare needs, to name a few. Not to mention the complexities of COVID moving forward. By placing the question to adopt SB2 back onto the official ballot and allowing for an all-day vote, voter participation is increased. Third, this bill undoes the inequitable standards caused by the changes to the law. By placing the question to adopt SB2 back onto the official ballot, the method to adopt SB2 is the same as the method to rescind. In conclusion, this bill affirms the many opportunities required by statute for voters to become informed on SB2 and also provides voters with more time to carefully consider the issue. This bill enables greater voter participation, better representing the will of the people. And lastly, this bill restores equitable standards to adopt and to rescind SB2. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee members, for your time and attention. I am happy to answer any questions at this time if you allow.
Questions from committee members? I do have a question. One of the opponents to this bill would say that you are using a new system to change the old form of government. That the form of government that these communities have is that these items are to be discussed in the town meeting, and you are changing that without a vote of the constituents. Could you address that?
Thank you for the question, Chairman Gray. This bill, as I stated, it simply undoes the recent change to the RSA. Originally, SB2 question to adopt was in fact on the official ballot. So to me, it's restoring the way that the law was previously. Does that answer the question?
I'm going to do my own follow-up here.
Okay.
Again, one of the discussions during that changing the law back was that the form of government that community has, if it is a traditional town meeting, then those things should be voted on in a traditional town meeting if you're going to change the form of government. And that's the reason it was changed back, so that it conformed with that. And that's what I'm trying to get you to comment on is, does this constitute a change of the way we govern ourselves, the change of government for that community by using a different method to do it?
Thank you for the further clarification. I would say that, yes, clearly SB2 is changing the form of government and the way that traditional town meetings are handled. But I would also say that there are other questions that are placed, decisions that the legislative body in a municipality, that those questions are placed on the official ballot to make a decision. And I would further add that there are hearings and there are multiple opportunities for voters to become informed and to learn about and have a discussion. And in my mind, despite the fact that technically the way that town meetings are conducted is changed, and that it would be a deviation from that being discussed at a traditional town meeting, it doesn't eliminate the discussion. There are other venues and other forms and times and places at which the issue can be discussed. So I understand the point that you're getting at, but I don't feel that it's there's still the ability to discuss and debate and hear all sides of the issue.
Okay, questions from the committee members? All right, thank you very much. The next person we have on the list is
Representative Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm presuming you can hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to testify against this bill. For the record, my name is Marjorie Porter. I represent the good people in Antrim, Hillsborough, and Windsor, Hillsborough District 1. And I am here to speak against this bill for the very reasons that the chair just brought forward in his questioning of the former representative. This indeed changes the form of government that a town is using, and it uses a form of government they don't have yet in order to change the form of government. And that just doesn't make sense to me. Many large decisions are made at traditional town meetings, including bonding for fire stations and things like that, that people become informed about prior to the town meeting and at the town meeting. And changing a form of government is one of those major decisions, and it should be made in using the process that the community has in place at the time. I'm not sure on this. Is an idea, a thought that came to me while I was listening to Representative Power. I don't believe that the requirement for a hearing and that sort of thing before changing to an SB2 has been repealed by the enactment of HB 415 in 2019. I think those requirements are still there. So people do have plenty of opportunity to look into this before they vote. So I would ask you to please look unfavorably on this bill. I've been serving on the Municipal and County Government Committee in the House for a lot of terms now, and we always have issues with the SB2 form of government. People are trying to change it back and forth. I think at the time the official ballot form of government was enacted, people thought that it would be a way for more people to participate in the process. But what they're finding is that the town meeting or the deliberative session, both can be poorly attended. It's unfortunate that we try to fix a problem by creating another problem. So I would ask you, please, to consider unfavorably HB 374, which, looking back on the record, did pass the House in 2019 by a vote of 235 to 122, and on a voice vote in the Senate in that same year. So it was well thought out and before it was enacted, and it was positively received. So I thank you, and I'll take any questions that you might have.
Committee questions? Seeing none, thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
Kirsten?
Next, we have Representative Gay.
Thank you very much for allowing me to testify. Ever since I moved to New Hampshire in 1975, I have been attending town meetings. I really love it. That's what launched me, and took a long time to get me to the House, but I always was a participant. So I really love town meeting. However, because so many people choose not to attend, they have a million excuses. They'll watch on TV at home, but they don't participate. I still go to town meetings. I still think it's a great thing. I really wish my family in Texas had that opportunity. But I don't think it is the only place to be voting on really critical things like your town government. So I like the fact that SB2 was presented years ago and that we were free to vote on it. I don't know what very small towns do to elect their officials, their selectmen and budget committee people and representatives, because, well, not representatives, but all the town elections. I don't know if y'all do that in your town meeting. In Salem, we did town meeting. We did vote on things and sometimes secret ballot, but we never voted for our officials at town meeting. We always had the election that used to fall between the two, the town meeting and the school meeting, which we still do. So I don't have a problem at all justifying letting people vote on something so critical as SB2 at the ballot box. To me, that's far more representative than the 300 or so people who attend town meeting. It's just way more fair. It involves, it makes it possible for a whole lot of people to come. As far as I know, there's no way to do an absentee ballot to attend town meeting. So automatically that excludes a whole lot of people. So I think SB2 should be voted on the way SB2 offers, and that is at the ballot box. I think it's far more democratic than allowing only the people who can attend the town meeting. Even though I'd like to throttle some of them because they're being lazy and not coming, other people genuinely cannot attend without great duress. So I'm speaking definitely in support of this bill to once again allow people to vote for the method that they want in the method that they want. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Representative. Are there any questions from senators? Seeing none, thank you very much. And we'll move on to our next person.
Next, we have Representative Yokolo.
Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am speaking today in favor, and I believe, and I was reached out to support this bill by a constituent who has been trying to get SB2 in one of the towns. And when this bill passed, they pretty much just gave up. They said that it was not fair, that the people, you're pretty much asking the people that already have the power in the town, the select group of people that are willing to spend all day at a town meeting and have that ability to give up the power and cede that power to the rest of the community, which may only have an hour or so. As many places, people that work during that time, some businesses will allow an hour or two to go visit a polling place, but asking for an entire day off to be able to spend 4, 5, 6 hours to vote on the question just seemed unreasonable. And so they have essentially given up, and so that they really need this switched back so that they felt like people were able to be intimidated, and you're already able, anyone that's speaking in favor of SB2 at the town meeting is kind of shunned, they felt. And then they also felt that, you're just asking the people that already have the power to give up that power. So with that, I am happy to take any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. And we'll move on to our next speaker.
Our next speaker is Eric Power.
Mr. Power.
Yes, Mr. Chair and honorable committee members, my name is Eric Power. I live in Brookline. I am a former school board member and a current planning board member, and I'm testifying as a member of the public. I'm speaking in favor of House Bill 374. Until the 2019 change in the law, the question of adopting the SB2 ballot form of town meeting was placed on the official ballot to be voted on during school election day, town or school election day. With the change, starting in 2020, you must come to the meeting, the traditional meeting, to actually vote on SB2. Let me explain why this change makes it virtually impossible for a town or school district to adopt SB2. To illustrate the point, I'll use the example of the Hollis-Brookline Cooperative School District, which includes the towns of Hollis and Brookline. When the SB2 adoption question is proposed, there are mandatory hearings that must be conducted. RSA 4014 requires 2 SB2 adoption hearings to be widely announced, with a hearing in each town and on different days. In addition, the school board deliberates and takes a position on the SB2 adoption at the required budget hearing, which has public input. In addition, all of these meetings are live streamed and recorded, and minutes are available too. There are many opportunities for citizens to get informed and debate SB2. With the 2019 change, the SB2 adoption question is supposed to be deliberated yet again at the traditional school district meeting before a potential vote. I use the words supposed to and potential because voters cannot be certain that the SB2 adoption question will even be debated or voted upon. In the past, as a primary citizens petitioner, I have coordinated in advance with the school district moderator to present information on citizen petition warrant articles, including such topics as a tax cap or requiring tax impact notation in warrant articles. At the meeting, after the warrant article was properly moved and seconded, I have begun my presentation to the meeting only to be interrupted by an aggressive voter with a point of order with a motion to table the article. The moderator then calls a card vote to table by simple majority. The article is tabled with no further discussion or debate and no vote. Unfortunately, this pattern has happened many times over the years. The co-op school district meetings have always been long and sometimes had multiple sessions. In 2014, we had 3 sessions, 2015, 2 sessions, 2018, 5 sessions that were over 14 hours. 2020, we had 2 sessions. In 2021, this year, we had 1 session over 9 hours long on a Saturday. Practically speaking, only a small number of citizens are willing and able to endure the long multi-night and day meetings. And these voters are overwhelmingly against adopting SB2 because they prefer to maintain control of the traditional meeting. It's not reasonable to expect many voters in favor of SB2 to attend the traditional meeting in hopes of potentially discussing and getting an opportunity to vote to adopt SB2. Many voters simply cannot participate in the traditional meetings for work, health, or family reasons. They still want their voice to be heard, which is possible under SB2 balloting. Unfortunately, it's these same voters that are unable to vote to adopt SB2 because the current law requires one to be at the traditional meeting to adopt SB2. The sponsor of the 2019 law change said that the question of adopting SB2 is so important that it needs to require voters to be educated again at the traditional meeting, debated, and then voted upon then and there. This is a faulty argument for many reasons. There are already multiple occasions and opportunities to learn and debate the pros and cons of SB2. And with the long and multi-night meetings, voters have no idea when the SB2 question will be potentially brought to the floor. Lastly, there's no guarantee that a debate or even a vote on adopting SB2 will occur at the traditional meeting. In fact, the situation recently happened. Last year, our fellow citizens in Hollis placed the SB2 question on their town warrant. And during the traditional town meeting, the SB2 question was tabled without debate or vote. Did that 2019 change improve the process? Clearly, no debate and no vote on SB2 adoption is not an improvement. Thus, the effect of the current law is to prevent the adoption of SB2. Returning the SB2 adoption question to the official ballot is reasonable and logical. It guarantees that the question will get a vote. There are ample opportunities to learn about SB2. And most importantly, HB 374 enables all voters to weigh on this important question at the ballot box on town election day or by absentee ballot. When more voters participate, the outcome better reflects the will of the community. I urge committee members to vote ought to pass on House Bill 374. Thank you very much.
Questions from committee members? Seeing none, we'll move on to our next. Thank you. Kirsten.
Our next speaker is Cordell Johnston.
Cordell.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Cordell Johnston representing the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and we are very much opposed to this bill. You heard the history for most of the time that SB2 has been an option. Voting was done by official ballot in the voting booth. And that was a problem because the fact is people did not know, many people, I won't say all, but many people did not know what they were voting on. And I'll tell you, in my town, SB2 has been on the ballot probably 6 times over the last 25 years. The first time I went in to vote on it, it was before I was a municipal lawyer, so I wasn't familiar with it. And there was this question, shall the town adopt the provisions of SB2? It was one sentence. I looked at it. I had no idea what the ramifications of that would be. And I voted without, and I shouldn't have voted at all because I didn't understand it, but I did vote. And then the next time it was on a couple of years later, I actually did a little homework in advance and learned what SB2 was. But the reality is most people don't do that. They go in, they see the question on the ballot, and maybe they've heard something about it, or maybe they haven't, and they vote. The town meeting is a legislative body, and it makes decisions by having debate and discussion on articles that are presented to it. And then the people who are there for the discussion vote, just as you do as senators and members of the House of Representatives do. And when you're making a decision like this, it ought to have the benefit of a discussion. The other kinds of major changes involving town meeting that are voted on, all are voted on at the business session, such as creation of a budget committee or adopting a tax cap. Those are voted on at the business session. Under the current law, where you vote on this at the business session, a hearing is still required before the meeting. That was true under the old law. The reality is no one goes to those hearings. I've been to a couple of those hearings myself in my own town, and there were typically half a dozen people there who were just there to argue their side. No one was there to learn. They were just there to try to convince the other side, which never worked. The only good discussion on this can happen when the legislative body is present. In the town of Bow this year, there was about a 1-hour debate on the adoption of SB2, and it was a great debate. There were probably a dozen people spoke, people from both sides, and they learned a lot. The discussion was very well informed, and ultimately they voted on it, and that's how it really ought to occur. Just making a decision like this based on a few seconds in a voting booth is not a good idea. And the legislation that changed this 2 years ago, I think Representative Porter alluded to this, but the law that is now in effect, which we think should stay, it was an 18-to-1 vote in the House committee. It was a unanimous vote in this committee and a voice vote in the Senate. So obviously strong bipartisan support, and we think that should stay. So we urge you to find the bill inexpedient to legislate. Thank you.
Thank you. The questions from the committee? Seeing none. Kirsten.
Next, we have Jim Belanger.
Representative Belanger, welcome.
Good day, committee members, and good day, Mr. Chairman. I'm Jim Belanger of Hollis, New Hampshire, representing myself. I'm a former New Hampshire state representative serving on the Municipal and County Government Committee for 9 years. I was chairman for 4 years. I must bring to your attention that the House Municipal and County Committee has dealt with this very issue as late as the year 2019 in House Bill 415. I respect Representative Power and her husband, Eric, who are very, very obvious, not opponents, but supporters of SB2. But we're not discussing the pros and cons of having SB2 at this time. We're discussing changing the way the traditional town meeting is run. At the time we passed the change in 2019, we recognized that voting to adopt SB2 in a regular deliberative town meeting should be done according to the town meeting process, as required of all other warrant articles. That is, to be deliberated and voted on by the same voters who deliberated it. If we approve this change to go back to the former method, what's next? Bonds, where we vote on bonds? Oh no, don't discuss them and vote on them at the deliberative session. We're going to vote on them later on when people have not heard about them. That's changing the method of our town meeting, and it's no longer democratic in my view. The method that was currently in the RSAs was flawed, that it departed from the traditional town meeting format and used a format that is in place after the SB2 process is adopted. That's fine if you want to adopt SB2, but as Cordell Johnston mentioned, we have turned down SB2 year after year after year, and that's why these motions to table come up, because people are tired of hearing about it. This bill, House Bill 374, reverses the effect of House Bill 2019, sponsored by members of the Municipal and County Government Committee, the former Chair Carson, former Chair Belanger, myself, former Clerk Porter, and Representative Maggiore. The 18-to-1 vote was all the Republicans and all the Democrats on the committee voted to pass this. The one vote was a independent and was not on either party. So this was not a partisan issue. It's my personal opinion that proponents of SB2 are attempting to introduce SB2 procedures and processes into the non-SB2 town meeting. Now, we've heard about people being busy all year and not having time to spend. You know, we're talking about one afternoon, one night, one evening, or whatever, to manage your government for the whole year coming up. People take a day off for a birthday. They take a day off for an anniversary. Why can't they take a day off and come to town meeting, deliberate, and set themselves up for the year? Money wise, the way they would vote. I'd remind the committee that House Bill, I just told you about the House Bill 415 passing by almost a unanimous vote. At the end of this, I understand that there's a lot of sentiment about changing. Okay, if there needs to be any change in the SB2 adoption process, it's not this one. Now, you might consider a secret ballot vote like we do for the SAU budget, where the SAU involves more than one town and so on, and we vote on it by secret ballot. Not that it should be secret, but because it's a paper ballot at the traditional town meeting, and or open up the voting on this SB2 item for an hour so that people that are home can come to the town meeting and vote. We do that on bonds. Maybe SB2 vote yes or no is as important as a bond. So maybe a change in that area would be right, but changing it to vote on the written ballot on a different day by hundreds of people who didn't attend the deliberative session and hear about it is not right. Thank you.
Questions from the committee? Thank you, Representative. Who do we have next, Kirsten?
Next will be Joe Devine.
Mr. Devine.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and fellow senators. My name is Joe Devine, the town administrator here in Henniker. I'm going to keep this very brief. Cordell did a great job kind of explaining why I also am in opposition to House Bill 374. Here in Henniker, we have tried to pass Senate Bill 2 approximately 6 times. Every time it has failed. In the 2019 legislature, you did make this what I would consider to be an improvement to the law governing SB2 forms of town meeting. As others stated, under the previous law, the question had been regulated to basically one sentence on our official ballot, leaving voters but a few seconds to really decide what they wanted to do and make up their minds. What could be one of the most significant changes in a town, the way we govern ourselves. The 2019 change did enable voters to have a complete and informed decision at the town meeting before voting. You heard Cordell mention Bo this past year. He's correct. That is how the legislative body should work. Much like the House of Representatives here for the state of New Hampshire, it gives people the opportunity to debate it. The issue is not whether SB2 is good or a bad thing. Adopting SB2 is a huge change, and when the question is merely just placed on the ballot, an overwhelming number of voters won't have any information about it. Many of them won't even know it's on the ballot until they walk into the voting booth. Something as important as this subject should have a complete discussion and debate, which can only happen at the town meeting. The suggestion that people can learn about it through other means is frankly silly. As you know, other than 1 or 2 people, nobody really pays attention to town meeting questions until they actually come into the town meeting for their vote. Be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we're getting down there on my list at least, Kirsten. How many more do we have?
Signed up on my list, I have 1 more speaker.
All right. For the other people out there, if you do want to talk, please raise your hand now because we're getting to the end.
All right. And I'll bring in Gail Cromwell.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
I appreciate this. I appreciate this opportunity. I would like to tell you a little bit about our experience in the town of Temple with the old procedure of SB2. Just as a historical matter, since SB2 was adopted in 1996, 70 towns have adopted SB2. 162 still have traditional town meeting. And I believe we understand that there are pros and cons of both systems. I think we all probably care about the best opportunity for our citizens to become informed and active voters. When the change was made in 2019 for the current procedure, many in our town welcomed that change. And if I could give an example of why that was the case. The town of Temple, my town, we have about 1,000 voters. We're a small town. The question of adopting SB2 has been on the official ballot for 15 years. The most recent vote in 2019 was 43% for adoption, well short of the required 60%. The problem has always been the hearing required under the previous procedure. I was a selectman for 6 of those 15 years, and despite our efforts to get people to attend, rarely did anyone do so. The main source of information were the flyers that went out by the town, by supporters, by opponents. Then Facebook became important. That was the worst. Misinformation ruled the day. If you have a cat that is lost, Facebook is terrific. It is not the place, however, to debate what form of town government you want to have. I didn't learn I was evil until I read it on Facebook. And why was I evil? Because I said that military people probably had bigger things on their mind than what was going on at town meeting and wouldn't vote anyway. Well, I'm sorry I made that comment, but I do feel that. But Facebook is not the solution to providing information. The best place, as you have heard from the recent 2 speakers, is at town meeting. And I'd like to say that right now, with the current law, we are still required to have a hearing, and at town meeting, it will be by paper ballot, that's required, and you have an hour to vote. So if people have a scout at town meeting, they can send out the word, everybody can come in, vote just that one thing and go home. So this is something that could happen right now. I don't know why the motion gets tabled. I suspect it is, as one of the previous speakers had said, that it's still it's a form of saying we don't want to discuss this anymore. We've had it with it. And that I think is a legitimate reaction to having it on the ballot for 15 years and having people say all of these acrimonious things that have been said about it. So I believe that, and actually to table requires a 50% vote. So that in itself is a vote. If the motion gets voted to table, that's a vote. It says 50% of the people don't want to talk about it anymore. So, and I expect that even if that's the case, and I hope we won't table it in Temple, I hope we're going to actually discuss this thing in a full and honest way. I think it will be on our town meeting for years to come, because our people who want SB2 are never going to give up. I think we know that. So I would like to say that the current procedure has been in place for only 2 years. I would like to have you leave it in place and let us see how this thing will work out. I have myself great confidence that this is a better system. And so I'm asking you now to reject 374. And I appreciate your opportunity to say this. I'd be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much. Kirsten, did anyone raise their hand during that?
No hands, Senator.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing on 374. And as soon as you ladies are ready, we'll open the hearing on 545. Okay, we'll open the hearing on 545. Kirsten, would you call the prime sponsor?
Sure, that's Representative LaFlamme.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Larry L. LaFlamme. I'm one of the representatives from Coash District 3, representing the city of Berlin. And I'm here to introduce House Bill 545 to you. A little background. Due to mergers and acquisitions of the remaining 4 banks that are north of Lancaster, only 1 bank is state chartered. In Coos County, the Register of Deeds, the payroll account, and the nursing home direct deposit accounts are among those that are deposited in local banks that are not state chartered. These accounts all need to be moved and transferred. House Bill 545, however, would give New Hampshire counties and municipalities the flexibility to utilize banking institutions that are local banks with a local brick and mortar presence, but are not specifically chartered in New Hampshire. I introduced the bill into the House Municipal and County Government Committee. That committee reported it ought to pass 18-0, placed on the consent calendar, and was passed by the House April 7th. It has the support of the New Hampshire Bankers Association, the New Hampshire Association of Counties, and I hope this committee will also support the bill and report it out as ought to pass. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have to the extent that I can. However, I think the committee would be better served if they ask questions of some of the other people who are lined up to speak. They have the expertise and they deal with this banking situation on a daily basis. Thank you.
Okay, does the committee have any questions? Senator Perkins Coca.
Yes, thank you, Representative Laflamme, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. This may be one of those questions that are directed at your colleagues, but I was just wondering if in drafting this, you or those that you worked with looked to statutes in other states just to make sure that the kind of reciprocity we're requiring here is pretty standard in other states.
By way of history, this bill was also introduced last session by Representative Moynihan. And after some objections by the New Hampshire Bankers Association, the bill was amended and it was passed as amended by the House. House Bill 545 is basically that bill as it was amended, and it got the approval of the Bankers Association. It addressed whatever concern they had. And reciprocity was one of the concerns that the Bankers Association had, and this bill addresses that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Additional questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much. Kirsten.
Next, we have Christy Merrill.
Ms. Merrill.
Good morning, Senator Gray and honorable members of the Election Law Municipal Affairs Committee. Nice to be with you.
Nice to have you here.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Christy Merrill. I'm president of New Hampshire Bankers Association. We represent 38 member banks, and those members include New Hampshire chartered banks, nationally chartered banks, as well as banks that are chartered in other states. And the New Hampshire banking industry employs nearly 6,000 employees. I did want to also point out, Senator, that Rob Dietl, who is legal counsel to New Hampshire Bankers, he's president of the Gallagher, Callahan, and Gartrell law firm. I believe he's also signed up to speak, so he can take additional questions or we can testify together. I do have just short remarks, so I would defer to you on that.
Kirsten, if you'd bring him on, please. Okay, you should both be there.
Morning.
Hey.
So just to continue on, I do just want to clarify that we are actually neutral on the bill. We are not taking a position on the legislation. We are, as the sponsor correctly pointed out, we worked very closely with Representative Wayne Moynihan. He originally shared his concerns about access to banking options in the North Country. And so a lot of the language that you see before you today is carried over from House Bill 1119 in 2019, and we had a hand in working with that. But because the legislation impacts different banking institutions differently based on where they're headquartered, that's why we are taking a neutral position. So I just wanted to be clear on that. So yes, we worked with Representative Wayne Moynihan about the concerns about access, and as you probably know, the bill died on the table and it's come back and it's largely the exact same. I do just want to try to address Senator Perkins Quokka question. The question of reciprocity really is sort of central to this legislation. And I will just comment, and Rob can add to this, but this is one of the hardest things to try to address. And so there has been conversation about reciprocity for a very long time among banks and having greater access to municipal deposits. And so
We have done a look at the states around us, immediately surrounding us. We've taken a look at their laws. But what you see in the legislation is largely a self-reporting requirement. So we don't really take a position on which states are reciprocal to ours. And you've got the language that says in the bill substantially similar. And that language is really by design because, the closer you look at something, the easier it is to say that it's not the same. And so we do have sort of a working opinion on what states we think are very similar to ours, but the legislation as it lays out really requires the bank that's trying to get access to get a legal opinion saying that is the case. And so we don't really have that laid out. But we did try to factor that in. It's a really important question. And it was a difficult thing to try to get around or to try to address. Really, we just, the bill provides expanded access to municipal deposits by allowing out-of-state banks, but it does have certain protections in the bill, which we think are really important. So I will keep my comments to that, and we're happy to be a resource. And I know that Rob is on the line, and I'll let him add anything else that he'd like to as well.
I'll just say I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay, questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you both. And
thank you.
Thank you. Move on to the next person to testify.
Next will be Tim Felter.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Chairman Gray and honorable members of the Senate Election Law and Municipal Affairs Committee for allowing me to speak today. My name is Timothy Felter, and I'm Senior Executive Vice President, Chief Financial Officer, and Treasurer of Newburyport Bank, a $1.2 billion bank located on the seacoast in New Hampshire and in northern Massachusetts. While we are a 167-year-old bank headquartered in Massachusetts, fully half of our branches are now located in New Hampshire: Dover, Exeter, Hampton, and 2 in Portsmouth. We have made a serious commitment to the state. We have at those 5 branches over $200 million of loans and over $100 million of deposits. And we have 37 employees that had a payroll of $2.7 million. And so I suggest that is shows our commitment to the state. We spoke at the House hearing opposed to this bill, and we still continue to be opposed to the bill because we do not believe that, in spite of the reciprocity issues that Senator Perkins Quokka talked about, it still does not the bill does not make it easy for banks that are out of state to participate. And not that your job is to make my job easy, certainly it isn't. But what the law as drafted does do is require a set of procedures, including legal opinions and filings with the state treasurer and certifications and follow-up annually, that increase our costs to participate in the state. And those costs ultimately do have to be passed along to our customers and makes our offerings to the municipalities in New Hampshire much less competitive. And so in particular, I would point out that Section 1AD would increase the burden and cost of complying with the law, would require the state treasurer to put in place an extra process and procedure and incur additional costs. So as a taxpayer in Wakefield, New Hampshire, I strongly urge the Senate to indefinitely postpone this bill, since it does not provide the increased banking services to municipalities and in fact would reduce the accessibility to banking services. Thank you, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Felter. So are there specific changes to the bill that that you would make in order to support it? Because, it does sound like it's attempting to meet a need, and I'm sympathetic that it's difficult to define the reciprocal relationship, but it sounds like you might have some suggestions, or are there no changes that would lead you to support it?
It would require some changes to Section 1AD, specifically with regards to the process involving the state treasurer and the certification process.
Mhm.
I'm not sure that we're prepared in this session here or to come up with the exact wording that would be proposed. So I'm somewhat new to this process. I'm not sure how to respond further to your question.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Filter. I'm sympathetic to that as well. Could you clarify, is it getting the legal opinion that is the costly matter that you're sort of concerned with? And does that introduce ambiguity for you?
Certainly. It is that cost of the legal opinion, and I believe that there's also a clause in there that talks about a misdemeanor. I fully intend, or our attorneys certainly fully intend to comply with the intent of the law, but that certainly seems to be an onerous condition or alternative for outcome.
Okay, thank you both.
And I might add, who would follow up on that and who would enforce it?
The chair does have a question. You talked about accessibility, but part of the reason for this bill is lack of accessibility in the northern part of the state, and especially Coos County. Would you comment on that?
I'm an out-of-state bank, and I certainly would not be considering opening a branch up there because I don't believe this law would give me the ability to provide services to them at a reasonable cost, at a competitive cost.
Okay, thank you. Who else do we have, Kirsten, for testifying?
Carrie Klebe will be next.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Chairman Gray and Senators. My name is Carrie Klebe, and I am the Finance Director for Coos County and the Treasurer for the Town of Columbia. I am in support of HB 545. This is not an issue with our rural municipalities desiring to move our banking services to out-of-state banks. We are looking to continue banking with our longtime local banks that have merged with neighboring out-of-state banks. I'm going to give you two examples. First, Colebrook Bank was first established in 1889 in Colebrook, and in more recent years expanded to southern New Hampshire markets in Amherst, Concord, and Portsmouth. In 2015, First Colebrook Bank changed its name to Granite Bank, and in 2018 merged with Bangor Savings Bank, a Maine chartered bank. Sewoogonock Bank was established in 1887 and had 2 branches in Coos County. In 2006, Passumpsic Bank, a Vermont chartered bank, merged with Sewoogonock Bank, and in 2008 merged with Lancaster National Bank. This is how our Coos County municipalities began banking with Vermont and Maine chartered banks that have a physical presence in New Hampshire. Thank you.
Senator Susie.
So just to be clear, Ms. Klebe, these are banks that you already had existing banking relationships with and don't require significant travel, but have merged with out-of-state entities and therefore are now considered out-of-state chartered banks, but they're the banks that you originally established relationships with, correct?
Yes, the banks we've been using for many, many years.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Additional questions? Seeing none, thank you, Carrie.
You're welcome.
And I think we still have a couple of people. Kirsten?
Yes, next will be Greg Tewksbury.
Mr. Tewksbury.
Yes, good morning, and thank you, Chairman Gray and committee members, for allowing me to testify this morning. My name is Greg Tewksbury. I'm a lifelong resident of the Granite State, and I'm the president and CEO of New Hampshire Mutual Bank Corp, headed here in Concord, New Hampshire. My company is a shared service holding company that owns 3 mutual banks, all headquartered in New Hampshire. They are Meredith Village Savings Bank, Merrimack County Savings Bank, and Savings Bank of Walpole. Collectively, we're the largest state domiciled banking organization in our state. And we're proud that our company has well over 150 years of banking heritage. And we support the economic well-being of our state's customers and the communities we serve. In fact, that's our only mission. I'm testifying in support of HB 545 as it was drafted and passed by the House. It may seem odd that a New Hampshire-based bank is in favor of this, but I recognize that certain areas of our state, specifically those in Coos County, do not have a robust banking option for New Hampshire-based depositories. And this bill expands that. My support of the bill lies in the provisions that I believe provide for a level playing field for your New Hampshire banks. The specific items that have been addressed under paragraph IA, page 1, line 23, are critical in establishing this level playing field, and any revisions to these would cause me to no longer support the bill. I'm sure that the members of this committee recognize that deposits are the lifeblood of community banks in our state, and they provide the raw materials needed for us to lend to consumers in our businesses in New Hampshire. This bill ensures that these deposits are used in New Hampshire to lend to these customers, businesses, and consumers alike. In the level playing field that's been talked about, the reciprocity really allows your New Hampshire banks to be strengthened by participating in neighboring states on the same rules that we're looking for this bill to allow foreign banks to come into New Hampshire. Reciprocity, as President Merrill talked about from the New Hampshire Bankers Association, is really important to your 16 remaining New Hampshire banks. So as long as this level playing field remains in the bill, then I support this and certainly want to expand banking services to those remote areas of our state that are limited through mergers and acquisitions. So thank you for allowing me to testify this morning.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. And Kirsten.
The last name I have on our sign up list is Kate Horgan. I'm going to take a guess that she might be under, White Birch Communications. Okay.
All right. Before Kate speaks, if there's anyone else who wants to speak on this, please put your hand up during this testimony, because if there's no hands up, I'm going to close the public hearing. Okay, Kate.
Good morning, Chairman Gray and members of the committee. My name is Kate Horgan. I serve as the Executive Director of the New Hampshire Association of Counties, which represents all elected and appointed officials in New Hampshire's 10 counties. The association would like to register its support for House Bill 545. This bill would allow New Hampshire counties to expand their banking opportunities to institutions that may not be chartered in New Hampshire, but are local banks. And I think Carrie gave some great examples of some banks that are local banks, but are chartered in New Hampshire in Coos County. This is becoming extremely important to our more rural and border counties as they have to drive extended distances to complete county banking. While technology enhancements have increased some of our banking access, there are still some items, particularly in our nursing home, where we need to have cash on hand and transactions cannot be completed electronically. It would also allow us to seek out the best banking opportunities for our counties and our county taxpayers. We would ask that you support House Bill 545, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much, Kate. And Kirsten, did we get any hands?
We have one hand from Becky Benvenuti.
Ms. Benvenuti.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Chairman Gray. My name is Becky Benvenuti, and I just wanted to register the support of the New Hampshire Municipal Association today for HB 545. I am the government finance advisor, and one thing that I don't want to repeat the other testimony that has come before you today, but one thing that was not mentioned, I think it's very important to point out that all municipalities are required under statute to make daily deposits to their banks, or at least weekly if their deposits collectively don't total $1,500 a day. So it's daily or a minimum of once a week to make those deposits to those banks. And I think it goes without saying that, especially in the North Country, getting to a bank now that is a New Hampshire bank is a very long distance.
Okay, thank you very much. Are the questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Hands, Kirsten.
No other hands.
All right, we'll close public hearing on House Bill 545. and open the hearing on House Bill 67L as soon as you ladies are ready.
I will bring in the prime sponsor, Representative Marsh.
Thank you.
Good morning, Senators. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Very good. For the record, I'm Representative William Marsh, representing 7 towns in Southern Carroll County. Relevant to this bill, I've been the moderator of the town of Brookfield since 2010. And I'm pleased to offer you today House Bill 67 relative to warrant articles in official ballot town, school district, or village district meetings. 4 of the 7 towns I represent are in the Governor Wentworth Regional School District, Brookfield, Ospey, Effingham, and Tuftonboro. Despite my mailing address, I do not represent the town of Wolfboro, in which the deliberative sessions of the Governor Wentworth Regional School District are held. The school district is a bit bipolar. Towns like Wolfboro and Tuftonboro have waterfront and a very low tax rate. In contrast, the tax rate in my town, Brookfield, as well as Ospey and Effingham, is rather high. 2 years ago, my constituent Diane Smith filed a petition warrant article to put a 2.5% annual cap on tax rate increases for the school district. But very briefly, her petition warrant article was rendered moot by an amendment at a poorly attended deliberative session held in Wolfboro, an hour's drive away for some of my constituents. They removed the decimal point, and a 25% annual cap on tax rate increases clearly removed the intent of her petition. As a consequence, my constituents feel the process is broken, and this has become quite contentious. For instance, the town of Ossipee challenged the school district payment plan in court, saying they cannot afford it. House Bill 67 would restore my constituents' right of redress by bringing petition warrant articles before the voters. In bodies operating under traditional rules like my town, per RSA 39.3, petition warrant articles must appear on the warrant without any change in the intended effect of the petitioned article. In bodies operating under SB 2, citizens may not be able to get their concerns before the voters. A petition warrant article may be rendered moot by amendment at a poorly attended deliberative session, which may be scheduled at a time and place inconvenient for many citizens. That's exactly what happened in the Governor Wentworth Regional School District. This bill, as amended by the House, simply adds the phrase, "No petition warrant article shall be amended to change its specific intent." This means that the petitioners could appeal to the voters and their rights would be restored. My constituents ought to be able to bring their concerns before the voters, and I urge you to restore their right to do so by recommending this bill ought to pass. Thank you, and I'll be glad to take questions.
Are there questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you, Representative. Yes.
Thank you.
Next, we have Representative Porter.
Representative.
Good morning again, Senator, and thank you again for listening. And again, for the record, I'm Marjorie Porter. I represent Hillsborough District 1, Antrim, Hillsborough, and Windsor, and I'm speaking in opposition to HB 67. Often in the Election Law Committee in the House, we hear about specialized or 2 classes of voters, and I think this bill is creating 2 classes of legislative bodies in the state. Under the current law, towns that have traditional town meetings, the petition warrant articles are presented, discussed, amended, and voted on then and there. What this bill does is prevent voting members in a town that has a SB 2 form of government from amending a warrant article before they vote on it. It changes the process, but only for those in SB 2 towns. So there's 2 classes. Another objection that I have to this bill is that it is difficult to may be difficult to understand what the intent of the petition warrant article might be. For example, if someone puts in a petition warrant article to paint the town barn red, is their intention to paint the barn, and could the color be changed? Or is their intention to paint it red, which means that it would not be able to be changed? Who knows what the intent was when it was filed? I'm sorry, I lost my place here.
Just speak from your heart. You don't
I'm
have
speaking
to-
from my heart. Again, unfortunate that not many people attend an SB2 town deliberative session, although in my town, it's almost as well attended as the school SB2 session is as well attended as the town meeting. So it's not that way in every state, every town rather, but it's unfortunate that not many people attend. It's unfortunate that someone's warrant article gets amended, but that is the function of the deliberative session in SB2 town. We in the legislature can amend a bill that comes before us as much as we want, even if it changes the intent of the bill, because we have that right as the legislative body. And the legislative bodies in town should have the same right. In fact, the court has said they do have the right to amend the warrant articles that come before them. So I'm asking you to ITL this bill because it really makes it unfair for people in the two different types of town meeting governments. Some have more rights than others. And I appreciate your listening, and I hope that was understandable.
Questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Cordell Johnston.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cordell Johnston, representing the New Hampshire Municipal Association, in very strong opposition to this bill. And our opposition is based on the fact that the bill simply does not make sense. An article submitted to a town meeting is just like a bill filed in the state legislature. And once it is filed, it is subject to amendment by the legislative body. The idea of SB2 is that although it divides the voting into two sessions, in theory, it is supposed to operate exactly as a traditional town meeting where you have articles that are submitted and they're subject to amendment by the legislative body. The sponsor said that in a traditional town, petitioned articles must be placed on the warrant as submitted. That's true. In an SB2 town, that's also true. They must go on the warrant as submitted. And then at the deliberative session, the warrant, the article can be amended, just as in a traditional town, it can be amended at the business session of the town meeting. To say that an article, any article, cannot be amended is just entirely at odds with the whole idea of a legislative body. And there's so many situations where this could lead to an absurd result. And just as an example, let's say you have a group of petitioners who live on Mill Street, which needs repairs, but the road agent, for whatever reason, has declined to take any action to repair Mill Street. So they submit a petitioned article to appropriate money to repair Mill Street. And that goes to the town meeting, and not until it gets there do they notice that there's a typo and it says Hill Street. Now you have a petition article to repair Hill Street, but they meant Mill Street. But if this bill passes, they can't amend it to fix that problem because now they're changing the intent that is written into the article. And I could come up with 100 different examples where it would make perfect sense to amend the article at the meeting, but this bill would prohibit it. So I strongly urge you to reject this bill and find it inexpedient to legislate. Thank you very much.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none. Oh, Senator Susie.
Attorney Johnston, what would happen in the instance similar to what Representative Marsh described, if one town that was part of a regional district had one amendment, another town had one that completely contradicted the other? How would you reconcile that with this language in the statute as proposed?
Well, if I understood, he was talking about a regional school district where, so there are, I don't know, 5 or 6 towns that are members of that school district, but the school district meeting, the deliberative session, just combines all the people from those 5 or 6 towns. So it's not like you have one town versus another town. It's all combined into one big.
Yeah, if I may clarify, I'm sorry, I misspoke when I said that if where you have towns such as he described with competing interest, I understand it's at one, but you'd have people at the one deliberative session proposing contradictory amendment.
As with any legislative body, at least in this part of the world, the majority rules. So, you know, just as in the New Hampshire House, if all of the representatives from Manchester and Nashua and Concord and a few other big cities want one thing, and the representatives from the smaller towns want another thing, whoever can garner the most votes wins. Similarly in a school district, you know, I live in a cooperative school district, and one town is twice the size of the other town. So at that deliberative session, you know, probably the will of the voters from the larger town are going to carry the day, and that's just the way it is. Does that answer the question? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Additional questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Cordell. And
thank you.
How many do we have left?
I have 2 speakers signed up left.
Okay.
Next will be Naomi Bolton.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, well, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to testify for you this morning. My name is Naomi Bolton. I'm the town administrator for the town of Ware. I've been with the town of Ware for 26 years. And before being a prior town administrator, I spent 12 years in the zoning and planning. So pretty well versed, I would say, in some petition articles on both sides. I'm opposed to House Bill 67, similar to as Cordell had spoken about. I think the current law and rules for amending has been working just fine in what I've seen. I could also bring up another example as Cordell did. If you have a petition article to raise and appropriate $100,000 to purchase a police cruiser, that's simple. It doesn't designate how you're going to pay for it. So generally it would come from the general fund. The subject matter is to purchase the police cruiser, and the intent is to spend $100,000 from the general fund to buy the cruiser. Under your current law, you obviously can't amend the article to appropriate the money for a fire truck or an excavator because you stay with the police cruiser. But if you could change the funding source, maybe sharpen the pencil, get different quotes, change the dollar amount. That's the intent. And I think having that little bit of wiggle room works well. It has worked for us. The secondly thing, in House Bill 67, I guess if it's approved, I'm thinking that it might create some confusion, largely as it relates to petition warrant articles. It seeks to add a paragraph to Article RSA 4013 Roman numeral 4, which talks about the first session of town meeting, which is SB2 towns. But petitions can also be received for zoning ordinances, historic districts, or building codes, which is pursuant to RSA 675-4, which those petition articles are not discussed at the floor at deliberative session. Therefore, I think it could create confusion to have 2 different standards for amending petition articles at 2 different places. So therefore, I'm opposed to it for that reason, and I'd be happy to answer any questions as well. And thank you.
Questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you. And since I think you've only got one person, anyone else who wants to speak, please raise your hand during the testimony, because at the end of that, if there's no hands, we're going to close the public hearing. Kirsten.
All right, I'll bring in David Swenson, and I do see that we have some hands raised after that already.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Gray and committee members, for the opportunity to provide our position on this hearing relative to the proposed legislation HB 67. As an elected official from the town of New Durham and chair of the New Durham Select Board, I want to provide the committee with my position opposing HB 67. I am currently in my third term as a selectman for the town of New Durham and am perhaps one of the few elected officials who have presided over both traditional town meetings formats and SB2 deliberative sessions, as our town went to SB2 form in a prior term of mine. Because of this experience in both formats and for additional reasons as noted below, I am respectfully requesting that you oppose the proposed HB 67 legislation for the following specific reasons. 1, HB 67 would give control over a petition warrant article to only a very few voters, only those signing the petition, rather than allowing a wider voting population to amend a warrant article to fit the larger voting needs and opinions. 2, HB 67 will be onerous to all SB2 municipalities, as it decreases the ability of those attending deliberative session the opportunity to actively participate in shaping all warrant articles. 3, why would the Senate or New Hampshire legislature as a whole want to restrict municipal government processes any differently than their own legislative process? From your own experience, you understand in any New Hampshire legislative body, once a bill is filed, it is subject to the amendments of the body. Similarly, at a town meeting or deliberative session, any voter should be able to move to amend a warrant article. 4, often heard in support of this bill is that only a small number of voters attend the deliberative session, and yet more voters attend the deliberative session than those on the petition, and those wider populations should be allowed that support to amend those petition articles accordingly. 5, given my experience as an elected official during both traditional town meetings and deliberative sessions, I have found that there are many times when the petitioner themselves want to amend their article due to additional information gained during the period between when the petition article is developed and the deliberative session held. And you've heard many examples from other testifiers today. As you know, even your own august body, a legislature who files a bill, may want to amend it for these reasons. HB 67 would not allow that process. I urge you to not restrict the democratic process and to oppose HB 67. In summary, HB 67 will prohibit the voters at a town meeting deliberative session from amending a petition warrant article. It is our belief that this proposed legislation, 1, may cause undue hardship to all affected voters, as it restricts their ability during deliberative session to modify a petition warrant article to improve its content. 2, may not allow for amendments during these meetings for corrective wording and added necessary information in a petition warrant article for voter clarification. And 3, severely limits wider voter participation from control of what goes on the ballot. Again, thank you for your time and allowed for this testifying, and I urge you do not pass proposed HB 67 for the above reasons. Thank you.
Questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you. And how many hands do we have now, Kirsten?
I have 2 hands. I can first bring in Representative Gay.
Representative.
Thank you very much. Again, I've never introduced myself. It doesn't matter, but I am from Salem. You probably figured that one out. The reason that I feel very strongly in support of this bill is that as a petitioner and as an attendee at town deliberative sessions, I have had the experience of having to deal with a packed meeting. Luckily, it turned out to be packed in my direction, not the selectmen's. They were fond, we found out, as they handed out a sheet that they had prepared apparently after breakfast before the meeting. They didn't like the petition, so they presented their own bill that totally gutted the petition. I think the reason we have the right to petition is that we should have the right to petition, and that the public should be permitted to vote on it. Fortunately for me, the very last time this happened, there were other people in the audience in the meeting, the deliberative meeting for SB2, who agreed that it was not fair to destroy the petitioner's request to be heard by the entire voting body. So we turned down their proposed amendment. I just feel very strongly that ever since, what was it, 1256 and Runnymede, that we had the right to petition the government, and we shouldn't allow a small group of people to block access to our voters. So for that reason, I want to keep petitioners enfranchised. Is that a real word? Disenfranchised is the favorite word. Well, I think that leaving the law as it is so that the petitioners can have their petition destroyed before it ever before it's ever voted on, is a method of disenfranchisement. So I fully support this House bill to permit people to petition. In 25 signatures, and of course you're always smart to get more in case somebody wasn't supposed to be on the petition. In 25 signatures, if you have a typo in there that's as critical as the town name, somebody should catch that. If it doesn't, that's just tough. You can wait till next year and resubmit. You do have a standard that you need to be meeting. So I certainly encourage you to support this bill, and it even gives you the option to make a modification to the petition if it doesn't change the intent. So it's not even rock solid, oh, you can't touch this. Just read the wording carefully, and it does give you that option to do something, a little amendment that won't change the intent. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, we're supposedly only have one hand raised. Again, I'm going to close the public hearing if no one else raises their hand during this testimony. So, Kirsten?
All right, last speaker will be Chris Hawkins.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And thank you for taking my comments this morning. My name is Chris Hawkins. This is my 7th year as the town and school district moderator in Newmarket, which is an SB2 town. I've also, over the past 21 years, held a lot of other elected and appointed positions in town. As I understand it, the underlying concern of House Bill 67 is that turnout at deliberative session is relatively low, and that small handful of voters can, in principle, amend warrant articles, including petition warrant articles. I just want to first say that my experience, low turnout at deliberative session does not necessarily reflect any kind of a defect in the system. My experience is that turnout at deliberative session is driven by issues and not by legislation or the structure or the process as it currently works. Low turnout, in my view, means that the voters are generally happy with the direction and the management of things. And if they're unhappy, and this is undoubtedly my experience, and I'm sure the experience of everyone else, is that if voters are unhappy, they find ways to let you know. They turn out in large numbers. So I don't think that low turnout is itself indicative of any problems. The reason I speak in opposition to House Bill 67 is that the low turnout is not, in my view, a reason to insulate petitioned warrant articles from the normal process. There is certainly a right to petition the government for redress of grievances. That does not mean that your views necessarily prevail. And it is incumbent upon people who support petitioned warrant articles to explain to the legislative bodies why the petitioned article is a good idea. The practical reality is that voters won't support any warrant article that they don't understand. So at very minimum, upon a fuller explanation, it may be the voters may determine that the petition warrant article is a bad idea. These are better reasons to preserve the opportunity for a full debate and discussion of all the issues raised in the petitioned article. Not a good reason to upset the normal deliberation process just because in this instance the warrant article was petitioned by a number of voters. If the petition has merit, it will go on the warrant. If it doesn't, then the people who support the petition article can go back, start the process over again, regroup, and take another shot at it in the following year. So, in short, from my point of view, while the deliberative session process may not be perfect, it's not broken, and I don't believe HB 67 is the fix to any problems that it has. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions from committee members? Seeing none, did we get any hands?
No additional hands, Senator.
Close the public hearing, and as soon as you ladies are ready, we'll open the final public hearing of today. 3:32.
I will bring in the prime sponsor, Representative Seaworth.
Thank you.
It looks like Representative Seaworth is using a different version of Zoom, so I'm going to just promote him as a panelist so he can speak.
Okay. Representative.
Good morning. Thank you. Sorry for that. I'm using a Chromebook, which doesn't always play well with Zoom. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, senators, for taking the time to hear my bill. My name is Representative Brian Seaworth. I'm from Pembroke, and I represent the district that includes Pembroke and Chichester. I am the prime sponsor of this bill, HB 332. I am also the chair of the Pembroke Planning Board, and it was while wearing that hat that I encountered a need for this bill. The language of HB 332 makes a simple change to the law that will create an even playing field when there is a finding of development of regional impact. And although we had some bumps in the House, in the end, we passed this bill on a voice vote with a near unanimous vote. Very briefly, development of regional impact, or DRI. This is a situation when a planning board application impacts communities outside the board's jurisdiction, or to put that in kind of simpler language, a development taking place in one town impacts neighboring towns. When that happens, the planning board determines that this is the case, and then the RSAs, which govern the regional planning commissions, specify the procedure for what follows. So what happens is each of the impacted communities and the regional planning commission itself are formally notified, and then in a nutshell, they're given the equivalent of a butter status in the upcoming public hearings. Now, one effect of when this all happens is that it will delay the evaluation of the application, and typically that delay is going to be a month. So what this bill then does is adds 30 days to the allowed time for a decision when the DRI process is invoked. And as I said, what that does is puts the two categories on an even footing. It automatically gives the planning board and all the participants in the review, it gives them back the time lost due to the declaration of a DRI process. This isn't a big change, but I believe this is a change that's going to help smooth the process all around. And it's going to allow both applicants and the board to focus more on the merits of the application and less on administrative compliance with the RSAs. So once again, I'll thank you for hearing the bill. I hope that you find, as the House did, that it makes sense and recommend passage, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none. I only had the one on there. Is there anyone else, Kirsten, that has raised their hand? Is there
No, I don't have any other speakers on my list or with their hands raised.
Okay. If anyone wants to speak, it's be time to raise your hand now. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And I guess I would like to go into executive session just to give you individuals time to talk about any of the bills that we've heard today. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to go in, and I will call the roll. Senator Bertzel,
Yes.
Senator Ward,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay. If we take the bills in order that we heard them, first one is House Bill 476. My only comment on that is I don't have a problem with it for the towns, but I got a reservation for the cities in doing it, because the cities do independently elect their selectmen, their ward clerk, their and so I guess I would like to put this one on hold at least until next week, where I would like to consult with at least the Secretary of State's office about this. So is there anyone else that wants to participate in the conversations with the Secretary of State on this bill, or?
I'd be happy to, Mr. Chairman. I also have the concern that the language relative to cities specifically cites assistant moderator and assistant clerk, and I'm not aware ever in the city of Manchester of us appointing assistants. I mean, it's additional people to work within the polls, but as you said, we have designated elected officials that have to be elected within the boundaries of the ward. So I don't have a problem with the concept. I just think the language might need a little cleanup.
And I agree with you, Senator. If you do use the paragraph, I think it's paragraph 7 in that chapter, somewhere right around 7, that does allow the moderator to appoint pretty much anybody he or she needs. But to appoint them as an assistant moderator, assistant clerk, assistant supervisor of the checklist, if they don't live in that community, or I have problems with that. Any additional comments on that one from committee members? Okay, so I marked that one down as a Gray Susie action. The next bill was 374. I was, in this body when we changed it back to make sure that the form of government that is in effect at the time that these decisions are made is the way that the decision to change it is made. I think it's Article 39 in Part 1 of the New Hampshire Constitution says the legislature can't invoke something like that on change of government unless it's voted on by referendum, and it makes, but, so are there comments on this one?
I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't as intimately involved with legislation as you were, but the idea was that the form existing is the form used, and yeah.
Is there anyone that wants to speak here in favor of the bill? Then I would at this time accept a motion.
I move ITL. Second.
We have a motion and a second for ITL. Anyone like to comment? No. Senator Bertzel, we'll call the roll.
Yes.
Yes. Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Susie.
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Move consent.
Motion for consent. Was
Second.
that what I heard? Okay.
Second.
And we have, I'll call the roll. Senator Bertzel.
Yes.
Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Do I have anybody who wants to take it out? I'll take it out then. Oh, Senator Birdsall. All right, Senator Birdsall. Okay. Next one on the list was the banking. House Bill 545.
Vote ought to pass.
Second.
We have a motion of ought to pass. We have a second. Any further comments?
Yeah, I'm inclined to support this. I mean, even though this concern was raised about a legal opinion, I think all the other testimony was pretty compelling that this is meeting an existing need. And I know legal opinions can be difficult, but I felt on balance, all the testimony revealed this was fair.
Okay. Seeing no other comments, we'll take the roll. Senator Birdsall,
Yes.
Senator Ward,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Do we have a motion for consent?
So moved.
Nope.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for consent. We'll call the roll. Senator Birdsall,
Yes.
Senator Ward,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Is there anyone who wants to take this one out? Senator Susie. Okay. House Bill 67L. Relative to warrant articles.
You know, my heart says absolutely, but I realize we probably shouldn't do this. Because I know it's been a number of times at Hampstead deliberative sessions that the people in attendance had completely did a 180 on the wording of the bill to make it not what the warrant article had was supposed to be. But I realize that there are changes, probably even if it's just word changes that need to be made, that I would be afraid that it wouldn't, it would be misconstrued that they can't make any changes. So.
In some communities, if the 25 people that actually signed the petition would show up at the meeting, they could probably stop any changes. But again, you know, this gets back to the form of government, in my opinion, is that if the form of government says, yeah, we have a town meeting, we have a deliberative session, and these are the purposes for those meetings, then we should respect that. So are there further comments?
Just
Senator Ward. Oh,
just thinking that if the warrant articles can be treated the same way as our bills that are coming into the Senate and the House, we take a look at them, we see whether it makes sense or not, and very often we would make amendments. So I think that this is the same process that should be taking place at the town meetings or whatever, SB2 meetings or what have you.
And I think this is, puts it back on the, it should put it back on the responsibility of the prime sponsor of that warrant article to make sure that they get people out there. Because it's not just a guarantee that what you put on the warrant article is going to be what comes out on the ballot. So it really needs to be the prime, let's say the prime sponsor, to make sure that they get the support out.
I have trouble with the word specific intent. You know, to Representative Marsh's example, it was the percentage that was changed. It wasn't whether or not there was a tax cap. So was the specific intent that it be a certain amount, or was the specific intent that there be a cap? Same thing with, painting the red barn. Is it painting the barn or is it painting it red? What?
Right.
I think it's hard to make that determination as to what the specific intent may be. So.
Further discussion?
I echo the sentiment of my fellow colleagues.
Then do we have a motion?
Move ITL.
We have a motion ITL. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for ITL. Further discussion? Call the roll. Senator Birdsell,
Yes.
Senator Ward,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Do I have a motion for consent?
So moved.
I have a motion for consent and a second by Senator Birdsell. Further discuss, well, we won't discuss that one. Senator Birdsell,
Yes.
Senator Ward,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Do I have anybody that wants to take this one out?
I'll take it out.
Was that Senator Ward?
Yep.
Okay. All right, the last bill was House Bill 332. In the only comment that I have, and I spent almost 10 years on the planning board here in Rochester, either as a full member or a regular member, and part of that alternate service that I had was as the alternate for the city council. And there was a review done at the beginning of the process that identified whether this was had regional impact or not. We modified a road down near the airport, which was going to increase traffic on roads in Somersworth because it was right next door to the road that we were doing. And that was identified early in the process, and therefore other things could happen simultaneously. I understand that other communities don't have a planning staff that might pick up on those things. And since these regional impacts don't happen all that frequently when members of the planning board who aren't planners, or aren't attorneys, or aren't whatever else, might miss that. And so I don't think I really have an opposition to add in the 30 days. Comments from the rest of the members?
Well, they're adding the 30 days
Right.
to whatever else is prescribed
Yeah.
to give more time to notify the, I mean, you have to notify the just abutting towns.
And the
Municipalities.
regional planning people also.
Right.
Yeah, I thought it was a good bill. And like he said, allows you to focus on the substance instead of the process.
So I'll move on to pass.
We have a motion of ought to pass. Any second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Senator Ward. Further discussion? I'll call the roll. Senator Birdsell,
Yes.
Senator Ward,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Do I have a motion for consent?
Consent.
Second.
We have a motion and consent for consent. Call the roll. Senator Birdsell,
Yes.
Senator Ward,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
Yes.
Okay. And do we have anybody that wants to take this one out? Senator Birdsell.
Well, I'm co-sponsor, so.
All right.
But Senator Perkins Coca, if you want it, you can have it.
I was just volunteering. I am happy to have you do it either way.
All
I don't know that Senator Perkins Quokka has taken that many bills out, so
I have not.
I guess I will opt for her unless there is
Okay.
a reason not to. We want to, maybe somebody will pull us off the table and you can do your speech
Yeah.
on the floor.
You can read the fantastic blurb that you're going to get.
All right.
Can I just, I don't know if I do this before or after, but I just reminder that I'm going to be I'm not going to be around next week, but depending on what I can zoom in.
We would appreciate that.
Okay.
And because we do have, I believe, 4 bills that are going up on the schedule. And then I think we have 4 the week after, and then 1 on the 17th.
2 on the 17th.
I think that the 1 on the 17th, 476, we heard today.
Yes, you're right.
We're down to 1 on the 17th. So
I just need to, I'll connect with you after because I need to know what I need to bring down with me.
We can provide the list to you. In fact, if you read off the bills that we've got scheduled for next week slowly so that
Yes.
can write it down.
So next week we are going to take up, or you all are going to take up HB 77, HB 98, HB 263, and HB 523 FN.
And that FN is the only other FN that we haven't dealt with so far. Now, as for bills that we will exec, Regina, it's just those few that we didn't take on the list, and the only one that we've left from today is 476. And
So, well, and that, so 233, 243, 285, 484, and 476.
Yes.
ma'am.
And I'll update that sheet for you. So.
Okay.
And I want to commend the committee on all the work that they've done, because
Good shape.
we really have done an awful lot of work and not re-referring things and dealing with them, either passing them or rejecting them. And so I think that you've done an excellent job as a committee. So is there any other comments for executive session before we take a motion to go out? Okay. Who moves to go out of executive session? Senator Birdsell, seconded by, sounds like Senator Susie. And we'll call the roll. Senator Birdsell,
Yes.
Senator Ward,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
Yes.
The chair votes yes. And now that we're in regular session, I do want to commend our committee assistants. They've been tremendous. And now I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. I'll call the roll. Senator Birdsell,
Yes.
Senator Ward,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you. And I guess next time I see most of you is in session. So we'll see you Thursday.